Hello, Management 6310 students. I'm Professor Mary Zellmer-Bruhn. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you tomorrow. I just thought I'd give you a quick overview video to tell you a little bit about the schedule, save a little bit of a time so we don't have to spend a lot of time tomorrow going over course requirements. I'm assuming that after you're receiving my emails and the information about the pre-class assessments that you've taken a good look at the syllabus and have a pretty good understanding about this, but I thought it might be helpful just to run through kind of what we're going to cover in class, what the schedule is going to look like, and a little bit more detail about the assignments that are coming up in class. So to start out with, this is all listed in the syllabus, but just in terms of the objectives for the course, why I created this course and what I think it's offering in terms of curriculum and learning for you as students. First of all, the main thing is kind of to understand culture more completely, getting a more broad and general view of what culture is, kind of where it comes from, how it operates with people, spending some time having you do some personal reflection and assessment to think about your own capabilities when it comes to working with people who are different. I cast this as cross-cultural management, thinking about it in a kind of global sense, but the course is also very, very applicable and important to think about just in terms of diversity in organizations in general. So the kinds of competence, cultural intelligence, and other tools we'll be looking at have relevance for any kind of difference to try to be better working with people who are not the same as ourselves. But we will spend a lot of time thinking about this in the global sense, thinking about national cultures and differences across regions of the world. So we want to spend time kind of understanding ourselves, understanding kind of our general skill set as they are now, kind of putting that into context in terms of the sorts of challenges that we have at work now and in the future. If we're thinking about our career progression and where we'd like to be, are we ready for those next stages, particularly if they're going to have more international content? And ultimately, because we're in a business school, to think about how do these cultural differences affect kind of basic work styles and organizational behavior processes. So that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish here in J-term. So if we look at the schedule, the class this year is meeting 3 consecutive Saturdays. So we have these full long days, about basically 8 to 5 each Saturday. And here's how the basic schedule is going to break down. Our first meeting tomorrow, we'll do a little bit of welcome and introductions, getting a sense of who's in class, what your international experiences are, what brought you to the class, what's interesting you about this topic. And then we'll get into this idea after we share that content about the cultural challenges we're facing in work and in other places. We'll move into a discussion of the idea of intercultural competency. What are competencies? What does it mean to be interculturally competent? And we will take a look at the survey items that you completed in the Qualtrics survey, and then we'll also look at the cultural intelligence inventory. And we'll kind of put that in the context of cultural intelligence as a general idea that is kind of an umbrella term to think about competencies working with people who are culturally different than ourselves. And then we'll spend some time moving into this idea of cultural metacognition, which is one of the main categories of cultural intelligence. And really what that means is knowledge or understanding about culture. So it's knowledge about knowledge, if you will, but thinking about what really is culture. How do we understand culture, where it comes from, how it affects us? And in the afternoon tomorrow, we'll be doing a fun simulated interaction that will have us experience that and experience cultural differences brought into the classroom. And then that will prompt a discussion about really what is culture and how does it affect us. That brings us to the end of our first day, and then we'll be looking ahead to next Saturday on the 11th, and we will move then into another element of cultural intelligence, which is knowledge, or CQ knowledge, or specific cultural knowledge. And you've already been reading some of these articles, looking at the Globe study, looking at Hofstede, But these are kind of common ways we tend to look at cultural differences, especially in management and business, to think about differences that people hold in their values. And we'll spend some time looking at those inventories and talking about how countries tend to vary on those. But we'll also really kind of interrogate the risks of taking that approach. Like what's wrong, what can get in our way if we start to think about putting people in boxes, saying Americans are this, Germans are that, Chinese are that. Certainly these are good starting points to develop this sort of knowledge, but we'll have to think about where do we go from there. And then in the afternoon next week, we will get into one specific way that differences across the globe can affect us, which is communication and language differences. And we'll think about a couple different things, including the fact that people's communication styles differ across the globe, and of course native languages differ as well. So most often we have to work in a common language or lingua franca when we work together across the globe, and more often than not, that's English, which puts us from the U.S. in a very privileged position. But we can think about what kinds of problems arise when people have to work in a non-native language, and what happens to our processing about their expertise, trustworthiness, and other kinds of things. So we'll spend the afternoon working on that, and we'll be participating in a kind of fun interactive simulation to hopefully get a little sense of that, especially for us when we're most often able to work in our native language. And then our last day, which will be in 3 weeks on Saturday, we're going to then kind of start to think more about managing across cultures, the actual practice of management. Now, of course, this is going to come up in our conversation starting tomorrow, but we're going to spend some time thinking about specific places, specific organizational behavior activities that where we know there's sort of documented differences around the globe. So specifically, we're going to look at these processes of evaluating. So one important role we play as managers is evaluating employees and giving feedback, and think about how cultural differences might affect how people expect to hear feedback, what happens in terms of upward feedback versus downward feedback. Persuasion and influence processes, I think, then leading right into leadership. Both of those obviously are very, very vital processes in organizations, influencing and leading others. And we'll talk about some variations that research has identified in terms of leadership styles that change around the world, and how maybe the tactics we tend to use for persuasion and influence can be effective, but maybe need to be modified depending upon who we're working with. Decision making, whether that tends to be more authoritarian, top-down, or participative. The idea of just general trust and conflict processes. And finally, it's kind of obscured there by my picture, but scheduling, the way that time is used and expected across the world is different, and think about how that might affect us at work. So that'll be our final day. And what I'll say is across each of these days, we'll have breakout times. You'll be working in a group. There is a group project that I'll talk about a little bit more in just a moment. I'll be giving you some time to work on that. You will have to work on that somewhat out of class time as well, but I'll build in some opportunity to work on that as well. And same thing on this third day, we will probably have you do some group work and do some presentations toward the end of the day, so the class gets to learn a little bit about what you've been discovering about the specific country you'll be investigating. More on that in just a moment. So here we are then with the assignments. Again, all of these are in the syllabus, and I trust that you've taken a little bit of a look at this already, and you have one paper due tomorrow. But I just thought I'd run through the breakdown of the requirements of class here just to make sure if you have any questions that hopefully this helps answer those. So there's a number of different activities in class, and I'm going to move this over just a little bit so it actually fits. There we go. Okay. So first of all, there was 5% that is non-graded but required. So these points will go toward your overall grade, which was to complete this pre-class assessments, the Qualtrics survey and the cultural intelligence inventory. And we'll be giving you feedback on both of those instruments tomorrow in class. Then we have the cultural challenges paper, which is 20%. These immersion experiences and memos, 2 of them, 20%, so 10% each. There's a group project for 20%, and kind of your major individual work, which is putting all of this together from the challenges to the immersion into a development plan, is 25%, and then participation, which will be gauged in 3 different ways, and I'll come to that in just a moment. So participation will be evaluated by me in terms of your presence in class and your participation in your kind of addition to the general learning environment of the class. And it'll also come from a self-assessment. So there will be a document, a file on Canvas that you will fill out yourself and turn in at the end of class that kind of evaluates your own participation as you kind of look at it across the 3 days of class. I got a fuzz hanging in the air there. And then finally, your team will provide an assessment of you that will be turned in when the group project is completed. So those will come together to total that 10% of your grade. Then we have the cultural challenges paper, which is due tomorrow. And so you I'm sure have already done this and looked at this, but just if you're looking at considering any final polish on this tonight, the main purpose of this paper is to get you thinking about, what are those challenges at work? What kinds of situations are you in where you need to work with people who are different from yourself? And those could be internationally different, people coming from other parts of the world, or they could be people who are culturally different, who are from the U.S. Maybe they're immigrants, maybe they come from different religious or socioeconomic or political backgrounds than you, and all of those things can generate challenges working together at work. So I wanted you to spend some time reflecting. It's a great learning tool to reflect and to think ahead before you come into new content. And it provides this kind of as-is foundation. Where am I right now? The other part of this paper that I want, though, is not just purely descriptive. You will have read the Cultural Intelligence textbook and a variety of papers already this week about cultural differences. And what I'd like to make sure is that you're bringing those in, that you are reflecting on some of that reading, maybe most especially on the Cultural Intelligence book, which is going to talk about those dimensions of metacognition, and knowledge, and behaviors or mindfulness or capabilities to adapt. And I'd like to see you kind of evaluating yourself here at the start on those dimensions. And that's a really important exercise to do, because you'll get some feedback tomorrow, and then you can say, oh, how accurately did I really see myself? Because oftentimes we're not always as aware of ourselves and how we're coming across. And so spending a little time reflecting and writing about those things now and then getting that feedback is going to be an important process step. And that's all important in going into these immersion memos and experiences. So another really, I think, fun and important part of this class are these immersion experiences and memos. A big challenge with running a class on cross-cultural competence when you're sitting at home and every night you're at home and you're going to your normal workplace is that it's kind of hard to get out of your comfort zone in the way that you would if you were spending time in actually a foreign location and confronting real difference every single day that you're there. So these experiences I have designed to be experiential and to push you out of your comfort zone. And so you are required to choose 2 of these experiences, and it's really important that you use your cultural challenges paper and your feedback on your assessments to justify your choice. And so what I'm going to be looking for when you write these memos up are explaining why you picked the experiences you did and why they make sense given what you are challenged with in your workplace, what your career goals are, and what you found from those assessments. So take that into consideration. That's how each assignment builds on itself in this class. The challenges and the feedback should lead into these experiences that you want to work on very specific things. So you choose an immersion experience. Online, there's 8 different experiences. And what I'll tell you is that they range in terms of, I think, intensity. I would say that the very least intensive and most passive is the movies option. And I understand, I put it there because I know your schedules are busy and it's difficult to get out there and do other experiences. But all things equal, I would recommend against doing the movie if at all possible. I think viewing a movie is just passive. It's a passive experience, and it's much harder to really encounter something quite important and different in yourself by doing that. Having said that, if you choose a movie, that's okay, but make sure you're really challenging yourself, I think, with that choice. Maybe look at a documentary, look at something that's not just a Hollywood fiction view of cultural differences. And anyway, the point is you're going to pick this experience, you're going to go do the experience, and then you're going to write the memo up. And the memo is a 2-page double-spaced document. And that will include the explanation of why you chose the experience. And then it'll describe the experience. And then you'll write and reflect and analyze. And that part, again, I'm looking for you to use some of the class content. This shouldn't just be a paper that could be written without being in this class. There should be citations and references and use of material from class to sort of explain and justify what you did, why you did it, and kind of how you think it affects the way you're learning about this content. But again, there's 2 of these, and they, I think, provide all sorts of great opportunities. I've had students in the past go to the Somali Museum, to Carmel Mall, the Somali Mall. I've had people identify a group of Japanese immigrant widows and have tea with them, go to cultural festivals, go to the History Museum and see an exhibit on Native Americans, many, many different kinds of experiences, go to different restaurants. I think some of the most powerful examples have been the interviews with coworkers from other countries. Those have been very eye-opening for many students as well. So please take a look across all of those opportunities and challenge yourself with these. Oh, here they are. Yeah, so the options here are shop locally, learn globally. That would be maybe something like Carmel Mall, going to a much more ethnically specific place. Some people have done shopping at a kind of ethnically specific or international grocery store and cooking a specific meal, or asking somebody for a recipe and trying that out and shopping for all those ingredients. Taste the World is dining at a restaurant. More important thing to know there is I'm looking for places that are visited mostly by immigrants or the ethnic group from the restaurant, not a kind of an Americanized version of a restaurant that's international cuisine. So all of these take a look at, and I think you'll enjoy this. I enjoy reading these a great deal. If you have any questions, we could talk about these different options tomorrow in class. Then the final major individual project is the individual intercultural development plan. And this is going to kind of take all of what you did in the challenges paper, in the immersion experiences, and then lay out a plan for yourself. Learning from, it should be 6310. I realize that's an old typo. There we go. Let's just fix that right now. And all the things that you learned, you should have basically a kind of executive summary about what you learned from your challenges paper, your feedback, your strengths and weaknesses, and what you want to work on specifically. And then the bulk of the paper should be this sort of 3 to 4, maybe 5 pages, where you have the templates I provide online and you set up your plan, who you're going to work with, what you want to sort of accomplish in the short term and the long term. Ultimately, this whole thing should be no more than 10 pages double spaced, but you can add appendices beyond that. So if you want to use that template and complete it and put it there in the appendix to sort of show how you work the process through, that could be an appendix that doesn't count against your pages. Again, I'll give some more details in this in class as we build across the couple weeks of meeting. And then finally, there's a group project. I'll spend more time talking about this in class, but tomorrow you'll pick a group of people, about 5 people total, and together tomorrow you and your group will pick a specific country that you're interested in learning more about. Maybe that's because at work you're having to work with people from that particular country or world region pretty regularly, and you'd like to just investigate and learn more about being able to be more effective working together. Maybe it's a place you just have generalized interest in or know that is strategically important for your industry or your organization or your career, and looking ahead you'd like to build some more specific knowledge about that location. Again, I will build on this in class and give you more information, but I can say that what I allow here is some creativity and flexibility in terms of how you present things. You could write a paper, something more like a research paper that's going to be 10, 12 pages long, or you could create a blog, or you could create a presentation. The key things are going to be that you provide depth and detail. So if you do choose to present or create a presentation like a PowerPoint, I would be looking for extensive notes, or probably even better, kind of a voiceover, so that someone could watch your presentation and really take away some key learnings from it, not just read through a deck of slides that may not have enough depth of content. So again, I'll share more about this and kind of what we're looking for over the course of the next couple weeks as we're building toward this. I should say that the individual development plan and the group project are due 1 week after class ends. You don't have to take that much time, but just because it's a compressed format, I want to make sure that there's time for you to complete the entire class content and then finish up those 2 projects. So both the individual intercultural development plan and the group project are due on Saturday, January 25th. Okay, with that, that is an overview of the course, and if you have any follow-up questions, we can address those in class tomorrow, but I really look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning.